James, I wish you luck. It sounds as though you've gotten yourself into a precarious place there. Hopefully all will be fine and everything will work out just okay. Right, now we have left the Six Pride, obviously. We are no longer with them, as you may notice, and that's because we are trying to see if I can find little Tumba. Of course, he is my favorite leopard, and so the thought of him being around and nobody really following up trying to find him is quite sad. So I'm going to try and do that, and hopefully we will be lucky. I believe he was left somewhere in this area yesterday, so there's a little small pan in this section, so I'm just going very slowly because I'm trying to work out where his tracks maybe go. At this stage nobody knows where he went, nobody's picked up any sign of him, and so I'm pretty sure that he's either gone north into Djuma or he's come eastwards in towards Chitwa. Of course, he could have also gone into Torchwood, which is highly possible, but we're going to check in this area anyway, and we're going to try and see if we can pick up some sort of track that will indicate where he went and where he's actually sitting right now. So that's the kind of hope and the plan. I'm also of the opinion that he wouldn't have gone too far, so... Now, James, you're wondering what is the difference in size between Hosana and Tumba. We discussed this a bit yesterday, and it's difficult. I mean, you know, I haven't seen Tumba in quite some time, so I don't know how he's going on and how he's developing and what his sort of size is like at the moment. So difficult to answer. I mean, Hosana is definitely bulking up. So VM said he's just seen a track, so hold on a second, we're just going to go back. But Hosana is definitely bulking up, and I would imagine Hosana is larger. It's difficult to say though. Maybe James is a better option because James saw both Tumba and Hosana in the last few days, and so he'll be able to tell us a little bit more in depth as to what's going on. Right, I'm going to have a little look at this track and see what's going on here. While I do that, let's go back to the Masai Mara and Berentlio Smith, and I believe he's got something that should be in water but doesn't sound like it is.
Now, we went to go look for crocodiles, but we found 2 male hippos that are definitely doing the fight dance. Now, the one on the right is quite a lot bigger. What is up there? Is that a wound? Or is that his tongue? It's his tongue. Is it his tongue? Yes, it's his tongue. So we suddenly saw them sort of standing square with each other. This one that has got his tongue hanging out at the moment actually chased the smaller one a bit earlier. But this is definitely a battle going on at the moment. There we go. He's going to... pairing off. Probably competing for the big pool at Dusty Crossing. And the rights to the females there. So you can see the one on the right is quite a lot bigger. Here we go. Oh, and oh, there you go. Tongue in. Oh, out again. Now his tongue might be hanging out. He might have a wound in his bottom jaw from fighting. That's why his tongue's hanging out like that. So that's very unusual. You don't see that very often. Remember, this is 100% live, and we cannot predict what's going to happen. Our hippo fights can last for hours upon hours. This doesn't look too serious, though. It looks like a sort of youngster just testing the water. There he is. Now, normally if they've been properly fighting, you will see fresh blood scars and stuff on them. Susie would like to know, are they fighting for territory? Susie, yes. So outside of the water, outside of the water, hippos are not territorial, but inside the water they are. But the fights for those territories often end up on the land. Oh, I'm just going to turn the car a little bit, Craig. I just want to keep an eye on this guy. He's looking very cheeky. I don't feel like being charged by a hippo that's sneaking up on me. What do you want? Don't try to sneak up on me. I'll sort you out. Don't you dare. Keep moving. Keep moving. He suddenly came up behind us and he dropped his head a little bit, which made me worry slightly. Now, Francis is wondering, how long can a hippo be out of the water? Now, Francis, depends on how hot it is. Now, with this weird Mara weather we're having, with this lots of moisture in the air and very little sun, they can stay out of the water probably a majority of the day. But if it's very hot and the sun's out, probably 3 or 4 days before their skin really starts taking a beating from the sun. It looks like while those two are squaring off, this guy's going to sneak into the pool. So there's just something about the way it was carrying its head coming up behind us that worried me a little bit. It looked like he had mischief in his eyes. And also the fact is that I'm not sitting on one of the main hippo paths, so I'm not blocking his access to the water. Let's just go back to the other two quickly, Craig. Or it looked like the one was going to attempt a charge at the other. Now, what could be happening there is that young male is just got a little bit older, and now the main bull doesn't want him back in the water, and he still hasn't quite understood that. But I think it's going to be a relatively peaceful resolution here. It sounds like Rolf has got something that's not peaceful at all.
Yes, we do have two Topis, and it's two males that are full out in battle. It's very similar to yesterday with the giraffe when they were necking. They do pretend like they're very nonchalant. They have a look over. It's like, are you watching us? Or they're just looking over in different directions, and then all of a sudden back to battle. And sometimes it's a little bit like a goldfish, it seems, but it's almost like they're trying to distract each other, making out as if they're not really that interested in the battle, and then they go. A lot of head banging going on, so they charge each other and bash each other. But there is a little bit of pseudo feeding in between as well. But there we go. Lovely battle unfolding here between two male Topi. Probably trying to establish dominance for this particular spot. Seems the one on the right seems to be going back all the time. I wonder if he's a little bit less strong as the other one, but he has been hoofing the ground like he was there, so it does show that he's not quite willing to give up just yet. Lovely to see the battles for territory and dominance, and it's all included in the battle for survival. And you can see it very often with impala as well when they're fighting between males. That snort that they do is an alarm call, and it's actually to put the other male off, because if you give an alarm call, now, Daniel, you've commented that all the animals seem to be fighting at the moment. Is it mating season? Well, Daniel, they can keep this kind of dominance fighting up pretty much most of the year, because animals like these Topis, they do maintain their territory, and so this can happen pretty much any time of the year. And with giraffe, they don't have any real set breeding seasons, so they will also pretty much fight many times of the year. And maybe it's just that I've found a couple of these little scenarios in the last couple of days that's making you think that, but this does happen quite a lot. But you see how they give that alarm call. It puts the other male off because he thinks maybe there's a predator, and then you get a chance to go in while he's not looking or he's unsuspecting. So they try and confuse each other as well with that instinctive alarm call, but then they go back to battle. Very similar with the impala, they also do that. See how they go down on their ankles as well? They like to try to push the other one down there can be some times when antelope and the horned animals actually get locked up, or they really injure each other badly. These are very short horns as opposed to some of the other horns that you can have, and they're not terribly twisted or rounded on the side, so it's not very easy for these Topi to get entangled with their horns. I have seen springbok getting tangled with their horns, and eventually they were eaten by leopard because they were not able to get unlocked, and so they were stuck there, and each one trying to pull in its own direction. It landed up in them being very easy prey. But I've also seen oryx or gemsbok literally stab and kill each other with their horns, very straight long horns, and I've also found many carcasses of oryx with another oryx's horn buried inside of it. And then you often see oryx with only one horn, so it's obviously as a result of these kind of battles. Fascinating watching the males establish dominance. Now, Mike, you're wondering if the male's skulls are thicker than that of the females. I would say yes, and the horns are also slightly thicker. So that's one of the ways of being able to tell the difference between Topi, male and female. It's quite similar with springbok. It's also the same with the gazelle and even the wildebeest. So you have a look at the horns, and the thickness with the males is much more than that with the females. Now watch what this male is doing here. He's got a preorbital gland, which is a gland just below his eye, and he's actually wiping that on the grass. So very subtly here, he is marking his territory. So I wonder if he has now been declared the winner. Well done, old chap. Right, folks, we're going to move on down towards the plain after that very exciting battle, and in the meantime, we're going to send you on over to Brent, who's down next to the river.
There we go, there's the hippo bottom. That's of the hippo that likes to put his tongue out. Looks like he's heading down towards the river now. And let's just do it a tiny bit. Maybe we'll see him go into the water. The youngster's still up to the right. Remember, this is coming to you 100% live from the Masai Mara in Kenya. And it does look like he's got a wound on his tongue. That's probably why it's sticking out. There he is. He is a massive brute, though. Big, dominant hippo. Picking his way down to the deep water pool at Dusty Crossing. Now, is there another male already waiting? See, you see when a hippo does that, opens its mouth and closes it like that? It's generally when they've got a wound in their mouth and there's blood or pus. You'll see them do it quite often. It looks like he's taking the hard route to get into the water. Well, maybe he knows best. Here we go. Now there is a little group of hippos already in the water. Glendy says, what a tiny tongue for such a large creature. Glendy, I don't think we're seeing all of his tongue. We're just seeing the little front tip of it. Now watch, if you'll watch hippos quite often with their mouth. If he's got a bit of a wound, he will do that sort of open his mouth a little bit, let the water flow over the wound, maybe relieve some of the pain. There we go. Back to his little family group and into the deep water. Now, I'm pretty sure that young male that he's been chasing was probably from this group, and now just got a little bit too old and a little bit too worried. Okay, well, there was a before we send you all the way back to South Africa, there was a request for crocodiles. There we go. There's some Nile crocodiles. It's still a bit cool for them to be out of the water. So they're just relaxing, hoping for a silly Topi to go swimming today. Now, of course, while we continue on and in search of our first cat of the day, James seems to be having all the leopard luck.
Well, I haven't really moved once, but I'll tell you somebody who isn't having any luck is old Ronald. Now watch this. Ronald is trying desperately to move, but he cannot. He is stuck. And Hosana came to see him again, and I quite like this situation simply because as his engines are going, the cat is sitting right next to him, looking at him, getting used to the sound of his wheels turning, which is great. Now, Ronald's picture of him, you'd imagine from that angle, would be fantastic. And fortunately, Ronald is parked behind a piece of grass, and so all we can see is a few spots. So that's all Ronald's got, and you can see that he is stuck fast. He's completely unable to move now, going nowhere. So it could be quite a long day for us here. Now, I know that there are some of you who are watching who feel like this is some form of attempt to domesticate these animals or in some way interact with them. I must just reiterate here. Yes, I can certainly see why it might look like that. The plan, very much though, is to reduce our interaction. That's the whole point of these things. This is not an interaction tool, this is an observation tool. In the same way that this vehicle is an observation tool but unquestionably affects the animal's life because, well, it's big and noisy and smelly. We hope that something like Ronald, as I said before, will actually reduce the effect that we have on these animals, so that we can put an animal, a thing like this, next to a lion kill and then back off completely and watch what's going on. So eventually we can put something like this perhaps at a hyena den, where the hyenas just ignore it completely, and then we're able to have almost a sort of 24-hour view, if you like, of the hyenas at their own angle, without them doing, one of the things they do when we're at hyena dens is they come up to the car when they bite the oil caps, and we will think it's quite cute and it's quite fun, and it is, and I have enjoyed countless sightings like that. But it's not the objective of what we're doing here. We're trying to observe nature. We don't want necessarily to interact with it. So this is just a great opportunity for us to see if this isn't another way of doing that. Now he's completely ignoring Ronald. Sorry about that. Now at Wild Guy, you're wondering if getting him used to human scent won't affect his wild behavior. That Rover I don't think does smell. I suppose it smells slightly of human, but I think you'll find it smells much more strongly of plastic and gaffer tape, and the rubber of the tracks and that sort of thing. The idea is not to get him used to human smell at all. It's just to get him used to whatever that thing smells like. It's to get him used to having it around. And human smell he will get much more strongly from the vehicles filled with tourists, and also from our presence on foot, far, far more than he would from the Rover. I can try and move backwards, David. Shall I do that? Well, that would be a little bit easier. Then I won't have to lie down in the car. I know he's moving. He's moving. Let's just let him move. He's going to go back to the shade, I think. Don't lie down there. It's very close by. He's just going to have a quick look at Ronald. I do think that there's an element of sociality in this interaction. I think that Hosana is a particularly social leopard, as I've said before. I think he likes interacting with things. And I think that's what's going on here. And this thing that he's interacting with is being far less unpleasant to him than any of the other leopards he comes across, which growl and hiss at him. Very lovely. All right, we're going to go from the sublime to the ridiculous, from a leopard to a lizard.
We do have a lizard, James, and I was hoping that this lizard would help us find a leopard, but it hasn't. This giant plated lizard is just enjoying some sunshine more than anything else, and so we were tracking Tumba into this area, and we found tracks for him from last night, moving towards this section, but we can't find where he's gone from here, so he seems to have just vanished somewhere in this little section, so we're going to look around a little bit harder, and maybe he's lying in the shade somewhere, or he could have gone down towards Chitwa Lodge and moved away. But it was just nice to see a little giant plated lizard as we came past. So his last track is just off Chitwa's open area, moving, like I say, in an easterly direction, so coming across this way. So we've tried to check the Mulawanini, there's nothing in there. We checked Gowrie Main to make sure he didn't cross north into Torchwood, nothing we can find there. And then now we're on this little sort of two-track road. I don't even know what the name of this road is. I don't think it has a name. And there's nothing that I can see crossing over. So I want to just go back to his last track and just double check and confirm that they didn't maybe go southwards, because I thought they crossed north into this little block here. But I'd be very surprised if, given that he was here last night, that he's only moved 100 meters or so and not come out of this block in any way whatsoever. So I'm going to try and see if I can just have a look at the track again and then double check exactly which way it goes. It could have, like I say, gone down towards the airstrip and the hangar down there. We know Tumba has enjoyed time on that side and does like that Annette's area, and so I wonder if maybe, just maybe, he went that way and I just missed his track crossing back over the road, which is very possible. So Aegis, yes, that lizard would be a snack for a leopard, except that that lizard is very clever in that it is able to see very well and sense things, and as soon as a leopard comes along, that lizard will run into one of those little rock crevices and that leopard's got no chance to get to it. So the giant plated lizards are very clever. They're very sneaky little things. They are able to pick up movement quickly and then they disappear at a moment's notice, much like that one did. It just literally went over those rocks and out of the way. So they do it very quickly and very sneakily, and that's what allows them to stay away from all of these predators. But a leopard would most certainly eat one, especially a leopard like Tumba or Hosana, those younger leopards. They go after them quite a bit, and even a leopard like Mvula, in his state that he's in, if he can grab one, he'll certainly try and do so. So I believe Mvula is on Arathusa, for those of you that are wondering about him and wondering about his condition. He's on Arathusa today and was seen this morning, but he is apparently still looking very worse for wear. He's not looking good at all, which is not ideal, but hopefully he'll find a meal somewhere. We just need him to kind of scavenge a meal from somewhere, somehow, and that will hopefully then do the trick. Now, this is, I think, where I had the last track, somewhere here, VM. Just got to look carefully because they were not easy to see at all, but I can see the way that I was driving here is of the sort of notion that there was a track coming out of this area, because I have a little squiggly section here. So this is where my squiggly line starts, which I think was somewhere in this general direction. Here we go. I think, is this where it came out, VM? Somewhere here. Right, I'm not sure, but somewhere in this section is where Tumba's little tracks come out and move off down the road. So I'm going to try and have a little look carefully, double check where they go and see if we can find this beautiful cat. And while we do that, let's head back all the way to the Masai Mara and to Ralph. And I don't think he's still with his hyenas. I think he's moved on from there. I'm not 100% sure, but either way, I'm sure it will be entertaining.
thanks, Tristan. And yes, we've just stopped here and we're just having a quick look at some of these buffalo that are lying up here in the plains, and they're just ruminating a little bit. But we have left those battling Topi because at the end there we did see that the one seemed to have been victorious and taken on the winning role of that territory. But here, a little bit different animal. These buffalo are not territorial, and these are normally your older bulls that get left behind by the herd, and then they spend their time and their days wallowing in the mud and ruminating like this. And they can be exposed a little bit to lions because they don't have the eyes and ears of the rest of the pride, so it can be quite interesting and risky for them in that position. Right, folks, I am just going to start up and we're going to carry on going along down the road here. That was just a quick little stop that we thought we'd have a look at some of the buffalo that were just there. We are now driving alongside the Mara River and heading on up. You can see in front of us now that it's clearing slowly and slightly the Olololo escarpment. It's been a really hazy start to the morning, and it's actually getting cooler or colder as the morning progresses because it's opening up a little bit and letting that bit of warmth that we had in out. So it's quite strange how as the day has gone on it's got colder as opposed to getting warmer, which is the norm. But we're still hoping to find all sorts of exciting things. What does the bush hold for us? There's a lot of waterbuck just grazing through off here in the plains. Craig, you're wondering if we have King Cheetah in the Mara. Craig, as far as I know, I don't think so. It's you know that the King Cheetah is obviously not a subspecies as was previously thought. It is a pure rare color variation on the cheetah themselves, and it does just lead to the spots being a little bit more joined, and so a very slight color variation, which is relatively rare, and I haven't heard of them having any in the Mara, but it's quite possible. I'll chat to Brent and see if there are any, but as far as I know, the answer very simply to that question is no. But just so that you know, there are some regions in South Africa like the De Wild Cheetah Rehabilitation Centre, which is near to Pretoria, where there are a number of king cheetah, and that's where they can be seen regularly in captivity. But they used to be bred because of their monetary value. But obviously in that De Wild Rehabilitation Centre, it's not centred around that. Now, I thought we'd just quickly stop here, because there were some animals that we could just have a look at. A nice big bachelor herd of impala there in front, and a couple of Defassa waterbuck. Those are females. They obviously don't have horns, and slightly different to the ones that are in Djuma, because they don't have a ring on their bum. They've got the full white bum. Now yesterday, I think it was yesterday, Steve telling you the story how they got their rings on their bum, and they were the first on the ark, on Noah's Ark, and the paint hadn't dried yet on the toilet seats. Well, I would have to say then the Defassa waterbuck probably sat on the new white benches that were still dry, so maybe all the waterbuck were led on first onto the ark, and they sat on the bench while the South African waterbuck went to the toilet. But they always remind me of teddy bears with their lovely fluffy coats. They always look like the most friendly of all the animals around here. if I had to choose a friend animal, I think it would be that of a waterbuck, because I'm sure that they would make the best friends. I think animal like a Topi would be a double crosser. So I'm going with the waterbuck friend. And it's all quite relaxed here, and of course we've got the ever-present ring-necked dove calling off in the distance. Kukuru, kukuru, kukuru. And there's a male with his lovely set of horns. Now, Kirsten in the FC was asking me, what about the impala? And I'm thinking that she thinks I should be making friends with them. Well, I don't know. I still am leaning towards the waterbuck. They look way friendlier. Even the male with his massive horns, not quite as big as the ones down in Djuma in South Africa, in the greater Kruger Park. And they're quite a lot bigger than these Defasa waterbuck, but they're a hefty set all the same. And you can see he's been pressing them in the mud and doing his male territorial dance, a little bit like the Topi. He's trying to get some extra weight and size on there so he can show off to the other males. Look at me with my mud on top of my horns. Now, Kristen, you're saying that the black on the waterbuck's nose makes it look like a heart, and it's also your favorite? Oh, I agree with you, absolutely. It does. And that's why I'm saying that if I had to make friends with the animal kingdom, I would definitely be approaching the waterbuck first. He's got, well, even though this is a girl here, she's got a lovely heart in front on her nose, and just the cute and cuddly nature of how they look. I'm sure that they would make the best of friends. It seems like there's a whole pandemonium going on with the elephants off on the side there. We're going to have to go and investigate in a minute when we leave here. But the waterbuck, this is the ideal habitat. We're a little bit marshy, but even having said that, a waterbuck, the name is not as apt as it could be, because yes, they do like water, but there are other animals like the Sitatunga and the Lechwe, which are found in the Okavango Delta, which literally don't leave the confines of the water, and they remain in there. But the waterbuck per se, you can actually find quite regularly out on the plains, and so it's not necessary for them to be in and around the water all the time. They are dependent on the water, and they will not be far from it, but you can very often find them not anywhere in the confines of the water. And so Lechwe and Sitatunga would probably, either of them being better fitting of the name waterbuck. But they still look lovely, don't they? A little bit darker than the South African version. Alright, everybody, I am going to go and investigate what is happening with the elephants, which I've just heard trumpeting upstream along the river. I want to go and see what's happening there. Maybe something exciting. But while we do that, let's send you on over to Brent, who I'm not quite sure what he's up to, but I'm sure it's something exciting.
Well, unfortunately, nothing too exciting. Hopefully those elephants trumpeting means there's a big cat about that Ralph will find. The Mara has been quite catless this morning. I've checked the Paradise Pride zone. I did a little wander south for cheetah. Unfortunately, no luck there as well. But speaking of cheetah, someone asked Ralph about king cheetah in the Mara. You do not get king cheetah in the Mara at all. It is a rare colour morph where more menelism, which is the dark color, is produced, and it is endemic to southern Africa, that color morph, and it's only ever been recorded in South Africa, Botswana and Zimbabwe, and the last king cheetah seen in the wild was in the mid-70s, very close to Djuma. on a farm called Acornhoek, which is now actually a town, and probably about 30 k's from Djuma. That was the last king cheetah seen in the wild, was from right next to Djuma. However, in Kenya, there has been an even rarer colour morph seen to the east of Amboseli along the Tanzanian border. Am I causing a traffic jam, Craig? No. Okay, good. And let me just stop quickly. So there was a spotless cheetah. Not completely spotless, but it looks like a form of leucism. There we go. So there we go, that's what it looks like. And it was seen very briefly, and it hasn't been seen for a few years. Isn't that incredible? It does have a few spots on its mantle and its back there, but other than that, nothing. So that is an extremely rare colour morph of cheetah that was seen in Kenya. And you never know. I mean, we saw those leucistic hyenas down towards the Tanzanian border. I definitely think I'm going to try find them again in the next little while. But so every now and then there are these incredible colour morphs that happen. Well, it seems like Rolf has caught up with the elephants that were trumpeting. Let's go see what they were trumpeting about.
Thanks, Brent. Yeah, well, I haven't quite worked out what they were trumpeting about just yet, but there are little youngsters and babies around, and one or two chasing the egrets, and sometimes you can actually realized that it was much ado about nothing, because there can be little youngsters that are playing and they start and practice their trumpeting and making lots of noise. So from a distance I thought maybe there was something wrong, but having come a bit closer I can see these little youngsters being in very playful moods, and so it might have just been one of them trumpeting at each other. It's good for playful scenarios, but it does help them practice for when they are adults. So it is very important, the behavior of play, not only for elephants but for predators and antelope alike. A lot is learnt through play, and that goes for humans as well. Look at that youngster, he's chasing those egrets. Always funny to watch that. They love chasing the little birds that are always around. I've seen them charging guinea fowl, and one of the funniest things I've seen was a little baby elephant that was walking. He was tiny, and he was almost right underneath the belly of mom, and there were little Cape wagtails, which are tiny little birds, and they were moving around the elephants like the egrets do, just grabbing the insects that are bumped out. But this little youngster, he took exception to these wagtails that were there, and he constantly charging at them and trying to get rid of them, and it was just fascinating to see this massive baby in comparison to this tiny little wagtail, and he was having none of it. He kept chasing the little wagtail, who would literally just do a couple of wing flicks and be back round on the other side of the adult female elephant, and then that would really rile the little baby up, and he would run around the other side and chase him off again, and he would just then flick around onto the other side and carry on eating insects. And so the little youngster was really making a fool out of himself. But these elephants are happily walking through the plains here, heading towards the river, which is just behind that tree line. Looks like that one stopped for a little drink. Lots of puddles around, so they're finding them all over the place. Now, Nashlin, you're wondering, with that elephant there busy drinking like that, you're wondering if their trunks are connected to their mouth or their throat. Ashlyn, if we have a look at that elephant there, it's actually an extended part of the nose. So that's where they breathe through, and what they do with with that trunk when they put it down and they suck some water up. And when they're adults, they can hold up to about 7 liters in there. But obviously this little youngster that we were watching would hold a bit less. But they'll suck that up into their nostrils, basically, and then put the trunk into their mouth and spray it into their throat. And then that's how they drink. Now, the little youngsters, the little babies, they normally only get to be able to use their trunk around a year old. And that's when they finally work out how all the muscles work, because it is a fine network of muscles and thousands of muscles actually within that trunk. So it's very intricate and quite difficult for the little youngsters to learn how to use it. And so in that first year, it's a little bit like a fire hose that's under a lot of pressure. It's going all over the place, and the little babies also don't know whether they should be sucking or blowing. I've seen some very humorous moments with babies trying to suck the water up, but landing up blowing bubbles. And then they just land up eventually putting their mouth in the water. And I've seen the same with them trying to pick grass, and they're trying to work it out, trying to do it. Eventually they get impatient, and they go onto their ankles and they put their mouth over the grass and bite it off. So around a year old, that's when they get the full use of their trunk, and so that's a lovely aging technique that you can use as well. Now, you're wondering if elephants are infested with ticks or any other parasite. Well, it's not really prevalent with elephants because of their very thick skin. So there are some times where, or some places which is a little bit thinner, maybe just right underneath the armpits. But I haven't seen ticks on elephants, and I don't think it's very prevalent at all. As I say, maybe 1 or 2 little spots. But in general, I think their skin is way too hard for the parasites to actually penetrate and get a hold. And it's another reason why you don't really find oxpeckers on elephants either, because there's not really much for them to be picking off. And so when they also spray mud on themselves or wallow in the mud a little bit to roll around in it and then go and scratch themselves off on a branch or a tree stump, it's mostly down to, I think, the feeling of them getting a little bit of the excess skin off the top. I think it must feel like having the hardest heel on your foot that you've ever had across your entire body. I think that's how they must feel. It must be quite... the sensation must be difficult because it's almost sensationless. So when they get that mud on and they rub up against the tree, it must feel quite good. And I've very often watched elephants where their eyes are almost rolling back in their head, because you can see the wonderful feeling that they're getting from this rubbing the mud off their skin. So it is fascinating, as it is with all the rest of these wild scenarios. And for now, folks, I'm going to send you on back to Tristan, who I think is still in search of the beautiful Tamba.
I am indeed, Ralph. I am still searching, but to no avail at this stage. We found his tracks. They kind of meander along going eastward, so I thought maybe, just maybe, I'll come check on the backside of Chitwa that he might have cut southeast onto this side and loop ahead, because I couldn't find any more tracks in the block because the hippos had walked all over the top of them. So there was one track and then the hippos had squashed all the rest. And so I have no idea whether he went north, south, or carried on in his easterly direction from that game path. So just pot luck and just trying to see what we can find. So we know that he likes to hang around the camp. Him and Hosana both are the same. They like to be around Chitwa camp and around the airstrip and the hangar and all those areas. So I thought it would be a good place just to come and double check and just to see if he is around this area. I somehow feel by this time of the day, though, is that he's found himself a shady spot, probably with a tortoise or something like that, and is just having a really chilled morning. That's what I think anyway. There's what he did yesterday morning, and it's infinitely warmer this morning than it was yesterday, so just have to see. Hopefully, like I say, he'll pop out and be a last-minute leopard, although we can't complain at all. We've had more than enough in the way of cats this morning, so we can't be too upset. Joy, you're wondering, do leopards come down a tree tail or head first? Well, Joy, hopefully one day we'll be able to show this all to you, but generally they come down head first as an adult. When they are little cubs, like Tandy's little cub, it comes down tail first at the moment because it's a little unsure about the head first story. That's all too much to handle and a bit scary, and so they come down tail first for now, but as they get older and as they become more agile in the trees, then they come down head first and they can control their descent, locking those wrists up and then just kind of coming down and then jumping off on the last little bit. So head first it is on the way down, unless of course there is some sort of fight or altercation, in which case then they just get out in any way they can. So, Proud Cat Mama, you want to know whether or not Tandy's cub can climb a tree yet? Yes, it most certainly can climb a tree. So, it's pretty amazing. I was watching it the other day and I wasn't sure about all of this, but when we followed it the other day, it went scooting up a tree. It wasn't a very tall tree, but it did go up and it went completely vertically. So, I'll show you now basically roughly how high it went. On this bush willow to my left-hand side, it's a pretty similar tree to what it climbed, and so it would have gone up above the height of the car. So, that far left-hand branch, it would have gone up to where the leaves are. So if you go up a little bit more, and there we go. So that was about the height it got to, and then it clung there for a while. It looked around, looked at Tandy called it. It kind of looked at Mom and was like, oh, I'm not coming down, I'm happy up here. And then it looked around and then it realized, hang on a second, this is a lot of work, and it then decided to come down quickly from there. So it can climb, and if it's climbing there, then it's all good. What is that? Well, there's a bushbuck. There we go. Nice. I haven't seen a bushbuck in these parts for quite some time. Well, not a female bushbuck. We actually saw a male just now, but nice to see. Bushbuck unfortunately seem to be coming less and less in these areas and being replaced largely by Nyala that occupy a very similar niche to what the bushbuck do, and so sometimes you'll find that they get pushed out by these larger individuals and then they go into areas that are not really that suitable, which ends up in a situation where they are then predated on. There we go, I'll get it out eventually, and they are then hunted by all kinds of other things. So their numbers have declined somewhat in this area over the last little bit. We used to have a lot more bushbuck than Nyala, and now, as you probably know, there's a lot more Nyala than there are bushbuck these days. And what caused that, I'm not quite sure. Just maybe a rebounding population of Nyala is growing and conditions have been good, and that therefore they've thrived. I'm not 100% sure why Nyala have become so much more prevalent in these areas than what they used to be. Maybe it's because all those years ago, when these areas were not protected and people used to hunt in these areas, that we had a situation where, you know, we'd have a lot of Nyala would be a perfect size for staff rations and for feeding of people that were building the Salati railway line or something like that, and so maybe that's why a number of them were shot out, and then that left a void, and now they're just slowly starting to filter back because it is a protected area once again. Not 100% sure, but it's interesting nonetheless either way. But it's good that Tandy's cub is climbing, getting back to that, because as soon as it can start to climb, well, then you've got really very good chance of survival. In fact, its chances of survival increase exponentially once it learns how to climb, because then it can get away from things like hyenas, which obviously are the number one threat when this little cub is as small as it is now. And then obviously male leopards, well, it's not going to be able to get away from those, but at least it kind of removes the sort of hyena and even lions to a degree. Right, no tracks for Tumba coming out this side like I had hoped, so I'm not sure where else to go and look. I think maybe we'll have to retire for the morning and come back this afternoon and try again. So while we kind of think about where else we're going to go, let's go back across to James, who I believe has left his spotted cat, and I wonder where he's off to now.
I have left my spotted cat. I was coming to try and find his sister. We've come basically to the old den site. We just drove up the drainage line, basically from Hosana. We went down into the drainage and came up here. And having reorientated myself as to where she was moving, it's possible that she came here. I would have thought that she'd ended up further south. So I don't know, she's not here now. It's possible the youngster's here. But my theory is that It's a hornbill. My theory is that perhaps instead of her using that den site that Tristan found as a permanent den site, I wonder if she didn't use it as a resting spot on her way to taking that cub to a kill. And I wonder if for the last 2 days they haven't been sitting on a kill. James Richard, you say Tundi moving den sites, is she doing it at an unusual rate? No, I don't think so. I think the cub's now at an age where moving to a kill, which is what I actually think that has been happening, I think that's not unusual at all. We don't know Tundi in terms of denning. Certainly Tristan might know a little bit more about her, but I don't think even he has watched her den very often. And so to say that she was moving them at an unusual rate, I think would be impossible. She's moved. Cub's now 8 weeks old. She's had 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 den sites. Once every 2 weeks or so is really not a lot at all. So no, I don't think it's unusual. Oh, Chitty Chatty Meg, you say, what happened to Ronald? He's back over here. He's fine. Eventually Hosana moved off into some deeper shade, and so then we were able to go and fetch Ronald from where he was stuck. Hosana was so fast asleep and so flat by the time we left that he didn't even notice us fetching Ronald. So I think we'll just leave him to lurk there for the rest of the day. David, is that a stick or a piece of the car? Right, a piece of the car seems to have become detached from the rest of the car, which is obviously not ideal. Alright. Okay, Kirsten, I think we're going to have to leave. Is that possible? Can we link to Tristan, or would you like to watch my mechanical skills? Let's rather head back up to the Masai Mara, to a man who I know is blessed with far greater technical skills than my own in the Masai Mara.
So everybody, we're just driving up towards the Olololo escarpment. I have heard through the grapevine, through the bush telegraph, that there are some black rhino around. So I am going to go and have a look in that region, but it's quite far from us. So we're just making our way over in that direction. But I think we're going to go and take the forest road, go and see if there's any leopard poking about. It would be lovely to find a leopard. Finally, I still haven't seen a leopard out here in the Mara, so I'm hoping that sooner or later we're going to get lucky with some spots of a different kind. I know we were quite lucky on the other side of the river when we saw 2 cheetah kills in 2 days, and finding Dohari or Hodari, I can't remember which way it is, I always get it wrong, but that new male that I don't think has been seen very often was also a fantastic prize that we managed to find there. And then Miale and her son doing some hunting as well of that little Topi, but her son was a very lazy chap. He was messing up the hunts all over the place. Winter Prism, you're wondering if there's mongoose in the Mara? Absolutely, there are. And what I've noticed is the most prolific of the mongoose here being that of the banded mongoose, but I've also seen water mongoose tracks, so I know that they are present here. And the other one that I have seen is the dwarf mongoose near to Serena. But when I first saw the dwarf mongoose, I was very surprised, because I thought it was another species altogether, because they're not excuse me, they're not as dark as the dwarf mongoose in the Kruger Park. They're very olivey color, very much like the baboons, the olive baboons that we get here, very much that color. And so I was thinking it was a different species altogether, and then I did some research and I found out that it was dwarf mongoose, but with a slightly different color colour variation here in the Masai Mara. But they aren't very prevalent, so you get the dwarf mongoose, the banded mongoose, and the water mongoose, and I think there's also slender mongoose that you get around here as well. Right folks, so I'm going to head up towards the forest. We see what secrets we can find up there. But while I'm doing that and getting through this little road, let's send you on over to Brent, who's got one of those very big ruminants.
There we go. We've got a very grumpy looking old buffalo bull who's lost half his horn already. But there's quite an interesting dynamic that's happening out here at the moment. So we've got a host of different bird species who are with the buffalo, and for different reasons. So here we've got, right close to us here, we've got Hammerkop, sacred ibis. We've got intermediate egret. There we go, there's a Hammerkop and sacred ibis. The sacred ibis is mostly after aquatic worms and insects, whereas the Hammerkop is almost certainly hunting mostly for frogs and tadpoles. Then we've got a grey heron, who will eat all. And then there's the grey heron, very pretty. And then just to the left of that we have some intermediate egrets. Oh no, darn, the cattle egrets flew away. But we actually had all 4 species of egrets here. And unfortunately the cattle egrets have just taken off. But there we go. Those are the intermediate egrets there. Then with the black billed, that one there, Craig. There we go, there's a little egret. Oh, he doesn't want to be seen like that. Oh, and he's landed next to the great white egret. And there were some cattle egrets as well. But where did they go? They've flown off behind us. And as the buffaloes move through this little swamp, it disturbs insects, frogs. So it's a great feeding spot for the birds who'd be feeding here even if the buffalo weren't here. But with the buffalo, it makes it a little bit easier for them. Now, Jurassic Wanderer is wondering, is it the rainy season? Well, we're coming towards the end of the small rains. So we have 2 rainy seasons here. We have the big rains and the small rains. And the small rains in November, December, a little bit in January. Now, January, February is the 2 driest months in the Mara before the big rains start. And the big rain starts at the end of February. So February, March, April, May, into June. That's when the big rains happen. So, yeah, so we're sort of right at the end of the small rainy season now. Oh, so sad those cattle egrets flew off. We would have had all 4 species in one spot, which is not too common. Anyway, well, let's keep moving and see what else is down the drag. Now, there's a good spot for widow birds often up ahead here on the edge of this swampy marsh where the grass is a bit longer. Oh, well, good news. Commander Bond, Master Henry, has managed to fix whatever issues we're having. So let's go back to him.
I'm not sure that I fixed anything. There was a piece of car stuck, sticking out and sort of rubbing against the tyre. Piece of car is the best I can give you at the moment. I really have no idea what its function is. I found sort of where it was supposed to be attached, but why it was supposed to be attached there, well, that's anyone's guess. So we'll have to take it home and find out what's going on there. We are now driving on to Quarentin clearings. The gentle smell of Amanda's cooking in our nasal passages, making us very excited. David has been salivating for the last 3 minutes or so as we've approached camp. Oh, there's quite an unusual arrangement of 3 lilac-breasted rollers, now 4, one of them doing its roll in front of us. I don't know where to look. David, do you know where to look? No? Well, they're there somewhere, I promise. There's one. Oh, 2 lilac-breasted rollers having themselves a bit of a squabble. Now, every so often you may have thought you heard the wind whistling through a tunnel. Ooh, It's not, in fact, the wind. It's the little thing that we have set up here that drives the broadcast for Ronald and for the microscope. So it's not, in fact, windy. It's a completely still day. All right, we're going to go and have our breakfast. Yum, yum. While we do that, you've got another half an hour in the Masai Mara. And so I'm going to hand you back over to Brent Leo Smith to tell you more about the river, the birds, and his holiday.
Well, I hope Djuma enjoys their breakfast. Ours is going to be a little bit later, of course. You're still with Rolf and myself for another 30 minutes of marvellous Masai Mara. Now, I was actually chatting to Craig as I came through this area this morning. And I was like, this has not been a very productive area, this little stint here. We've seen lions a couple of times. There was the jackal den here. At Serval, actually, so actually I take it back. It's been hasn't been a productive area for big cats frequently, but lots of great little stuff. Now, has been a good area for birds, though. So I think this last little bit, while we're going through an area where there's not a lot of antelope and stuff around, we'll keep a lookout for some of our feathered friends. Now, as we start moving further into January, we should start seeing the Jackson's widow birds again. And very big, prominent black widow birds. Now, Dave is wondering, are there any wild dog packs in the Mara? Apparently there are two that come in, one from the north, from Mara North Conservancy, that area, and then another that comes in from the south, from the Serengeti National Park. But currently in the National Reserve there are no resident wild dog packs. Now, when we were in Savo, the day we actually arrived in camp, our friends were out on drive and they saw dogs, but we didn't unfortunately see dogs while we were in Savo. I must say, I feel sorry for the dik-dik population there, if the wild dogs are there, but I have also never seen so many dik-dik in my life. Of course, because I said this area was good for birds, there's not a bird in sight at the moment. This is such strange weather. Living in a chat to Titus and Daggy and some of the other Angama guides, see if this is normal weather for this time of the year, or if it is truly just weird. So while I bumble about in search of anything, hopefully something will pop its head out of the long grass. Let's go see where Ralph is and what he's searching for.
Thanks, Brent. And speaking of long grass, that's exactly where we're just bumbling along and through. And it seems just in front of us we've got some elephants moving through that long grass. And the other day we actually spotted some black rhino just here, and we could almost just see the tops of them. And that just showed how long the grass is in this area. So hopefully we'll get to see a little bit more of those elephants as we go around over there. And we are just flanking along the little forest line with this big valley that comes through and down from the Olololo escarpment. Now, we've just spotted a bird up here in the tree, and let's have a look at that. It looks to be that of a snake eagle, but I will confirm in a minute. Definitely a raptor. Now, just for all the new birders out there, or anybody interested in getting into birding, what do we term a raptor? Well, it's very much what he's got there on the front of his face. That's his bill, but very particular in that it's a hooked bill, and he's able to, with that, and because of that, tear and cut meat. And then, so that is the unmistakable characteristic that makes a raptor, and there are a couple of others, one being strong and long legs, and the other being that of talons. And that can help to subdue and kill their prey. Now, I say snake eagle because you very often see snake eagles with very boxy heads like that, but as he takes off, it's not a snake eagle, and in fact it looks like one of the harriers. So I was a little bit mistaken there. And the way he flew in at the end as well, very much straight up into the tree, but nice to spot that. And I'm still getting to grips with all the new birds here in Kenya, in the Masai Mara. There's a couple of birds that I really want to see. One of that being the endemic rufous-bellied heron, which I'm really looking forward to see. And another one that I would love to see that is comes here from October to May is the Madagascar squawko heron. And so I'm going to chat to Brent about those two birds and find out where he might have seen them, or where I could expect to find them, because those are two very special birds that I know of in the Masai Mara. Another two, of which one I've seen, that I would like to see some more, and see for the first time as well, is the rosses and the shallows, turacos. Now, I've seen the rosses, but just briefly, and so I do want to see it a little bit more and listen to its call. You know, with the turacos, you very often have a very ugly sound, if I can say that. It's not very nice. And for such beautiful birds, it's quite similar to that of the lilac-breasted roller, who is extremely, extravagantly beautiful, but he's got a terrible call. And the turacos are the same. They generally have quite a squawking sound, much like that of herons, and so it's a quack, 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 quack type calls that you get, and you normally hear them off in the forests, as turacos are generally your kind of fruit eaters, so frugivores. As we stop here in the lovely long grass and have a look at this herd of elephants from behind. Now, there is a little bit of ear flicking once more, so it is warming up a little bit. And it's been a lovely morning, nice and cool. It's only now really starting to clear, but it's been lovely light for photography and videography, so we're not complaining. I always enjoy it. Every day the light and the color has been totally different, and it's all down to the different weather that we've been having each day. And there's a lovely set of tusks on this individual elephant. Once more, I always keep saying that you can see when an elephant is left or right tusked, but it seems in general here these elephants in the Masai Mara are not using their tusks for a considerable amount, because it doesn't seem like they are utilizing bark as a food substitute. They're mostly eating grass, so they're not really using their tusks here, helping them to get food, because it seems like there's enough nutrition coming through with the grass, which is also great to see. They're not having to really vary their diet, and they're getting enough from one resource. But always lovely to spend time with elephants, no matter how much you see them. It's always great to sit with another elephant herd. And there's so many around that, you know, we might be seeing different individuals every time. So, well, I don't mind sitting with elephants. I really love it. So if you like it too, well, you're going to be doing lots of that with me. Elephants are one of my favorite. And so are the hyenas. So it's two of my favorite things. We'll be spending lots of time at that den as well. And one of the things I love is the actual colour of elephant's eyes. Now, it's a shame that this one has just walked in front and he's turned away a little bit, but I really love to see elephant's eyes, and I've seen them many times from close quarters, be it from a vehicle and on foot, and I find that they can be very soft, but at the same time they can also be incredibly harsh. Now, Bob, you're wondering what trees are those in the distance and around and in between these elephants? Those are balanites, or the torchwood family trees, and they dominate this particular area, and I think as a result of that it's called the balanites zone, and you can see the very clear browse line from underneath, and that's generally for where the elephants can reach until. So it's a very clear line, and if you look at it from a distance, it's all on exactly the same level, and so that is exactly where the last little point of where those long trunks can reach and grab those leaves, because they do like feeding on them. And in years gone by, this area would have been a lot more heavily wooded, and they say that in the last 50 years the big increase in elephants moving to this area at this time of year and making use of this very nutrient-rich grass, of the red oat grass, is a reason as to why this area has been deforested, if I can say, because the elephants have been pushing down trees and thinning them out, and they've actually created the environment that we're sitting in at the moment, because it should almost be a forest right here, but because of the elephants and their movements and their behavior, we're now sitting with pretty much savanna, if not leading into grassland type biome. So, folks, I think we are going to be heading up the hill a little bit and getting closer to our target that we heard through the bush grapevine and the telegraph that we like to use. But while we're doing that and going off to find that, let's head on over to Brent, who's still in search of our feathered friends.
Oh, well, I wonder if Rolf and I have the same target. I think we might have spotted the same thing. I think we're going to find some lions. So, just to keep up the Mara's end, bumpity bump of Catterday, I think there's some lions. I said it sounded like they were just below camp this morning, and I think what's happened is they were in the forest and they've now come out of the forest. But you never know, it could be something else. But Fuzzman Sparkles was asking about, could we see a yellow bishop? Indeed we could at any moment. So we've got quite a few different species of widows and bishops here. And it would be the fan-tailed, yellow-mantled, Jackson's, red-collared, black bishop. We're right on the edge of their range, but I haven't seen any of the red bishops here. I'm sure that there might be. I just probably have to look a little bit closer. I think I see lions. Pretty sure that looks like lions up ahead. Difficult to see in this misty weather, so let's get a bit closer. So I didn't catch who was asking that question, but someone was asking what was my favorite sighting in Savo. Oof. I would have to say the Gerenuk. The Gerenuk, because I've never seen Gerenuk before. But also we had Elizabeth, there we go, Gerenuk, but also had a fantastic sighting of elephants in the Galana River, swimming and playing. I mean, and then on our friend's property, a leopard on foot. So lots of fantastic sightings. Some wonderful birds as well. Let me just change lanes here. Hold on. Boppity boppity. Bumpity bumpity. There we go. Hi Sam. Good, thanks. How you guys? How's everyone? Okay, let's carry on. I think finally the cats have decided to make an appearance. As I said, I think they might have been down in the forest because I drove down here this morning and there was nothing. Hi, Jeff! So a lot of the time, the first time a lot of the guides are seeing me, it's the first drive out, so lots of happy waves and happy New Year's. I think I see a putty tat. A lot of putty tats, in fact.
Everybody, and yes, we have been driving through the long grass here, but I've been chatting with Brent, and in fact the animals that I thought was a black rhino in fact are lions, and just in front of us Brent is on his way up there to go and find that pride for you, and I'm sure we'll be going over to him very shortly. So I'm going to head in a different direction now because we were almost on a collision course there, heading in the same direction but coming from different sides because we both saw a little bit of activity up the hill. And so now, Greg, you're wondering what the apex predators are in the Mara. Well, we'd probably say first and foremost the lions, because of their sheer numbers and their size and the potential for them taking down everything from an elephant to a giraffe to a buffalo to a hippo. So I would say the lions are number one, and with some of the biggest population of lions anywhere in the world, that's where we'd start. And then I would have to say hyena being my close second, because they very often can actually hunt bigger and more animals than lions, as opposed to what many people do think. Then we'd have to go on to leopard. I haven't seen any yet in the Mara, but they are here. And one thing is that you must remember that those leopards in the Sabi sands have been habituated with vehicles and humans over many years, and so it is a very special scenario that you have there that you don't get in many other places in the world. And here there are a lot of leopard in the Masai Mara, but they're not habituated to people and to vehicles, etc. So you very rarely see them. So they're one of them. And then, of course, your cheetah, which we saw a lot on the other side of the river. So they also fall then part of the apex predators. And so I would say that those are them: the lion, hyena, leopard, and your cheetah. But we also have in the rivers the crocodiles, which especially here in the Masai Mara around the migration falls, they're hunting just like lions do. So, speaking of apex predators and crocodiles and lions, I think Brent might be getting a little bit closer to those kitty cats. So let's go on over to him and see if he's been able to find them.
Well, indeed we have. Just trying to get us in a good spot where we can have a look down over the marvelous Mara. And we've got some of the Angama pride. I'm sure the rest are around in the grass. We just can't see them. And you can see, there we go, in one of their favourite spots atop a termite mound. Ooh. Elizabeth is wondering, how is the climate in Savo different to the Mara? It's dry and hot, and far more similar to the arid bushveld regions of southern Africa, and lions. So a lot more similar, a lot drier, a lot warmer. Even at this time of the year, which is its wet season as such, or the end of the wet season, it was still very, very, very dry. I think I've heard a bird I didn't know occurred here, or maybe it's something similar. I can hear a lark. Sounds like a monotonous lark, but monotonous lark, as far as I'm aware, does not occur in the Mara. Interesting. I'm going to have to try to figure out what lark that is. Here's some turacos in the forest as well. You can hear all the different sounds. That's wonderful. The rufous-napped lark. And just there's something that sounds exactly like a monotonous lark, but Birdlife, he says, Brent the Lion Smith. That one I have heard before. Quite a fortuitous surname for what I do. I'm going to have to go listen to all the lark calls. Sorry, I'm just puzzled by this call. It sounds very similar to a monotonous lark. Unless they call the monotonous lark something different up here, I'm going to have to go check scientific names as well. Looks like the lions are probably going to relax around here. There is some shade available to them, although with this cloud cover at the moment, they might not need it. You can see how hazy it is out there. Jurassic Wanderer says the lions don't appear to be very large. Oh, so what? Something happened? Oh, they're just playing. I thought they got a fright from something. I think one of the cubs decided it's time to take a run. And now they are heading straight towards the forest, which is down to the right. Hosana, Happy New Year. Sad day. So you can see all their heads now popping out of the grass. Did look like something might have given them a fright. I'm not sure what. You can see the other safari vehicles there. As I said, I think they're going to settle down to the forests off to the right. And I think they're going to disappear into there. And you can see they're really disappearing into the grass. Okay, well, hopefully they'll be close by for the sunset safari. In the meantime, let's send you back to Ralph, who's just not too far to the north of me.
Thanks, Brent. Yeah, we're not far at all. And here is another scene that I would like to add to the segments of Big Five roadblocks. Now, I've had the elephants, and we've had the lions, and now here we've got the buffalo blocking us on the road, and it's a wonderful feeling to be in a roadblock if you're in the bush. If you're not in the bush, well, it's really an irritation and one of those things that you're not really wanting to be in. But in the point where we are now, I'm quite happy to be in a roadblock, because we'll sit here as long as it takes for these buffalo to happily move off and allow us through. But I think it's going to be quite tricky in getting the other two of the Big Five roadblocks. We need black rhino and then leopard. And it seems this bull's having a little bit of a word with one of the other individuals. Very easy to spot the bulls with that penis flap in the middle of the stomach, and that's the easiest way to sex buffalo. Both male and females do have the big horns with the boss, but the males is quite a lot larger than that of the females. But if you want to see if it's a male or not, it's very easy just to look on the stomach. There you go. That little fluff of hair hanging down there, that is your indicator. Now on the bottom of their hooves, yes, thanks for commenting, folks. Everybody's saying that this is a serious roadblock, and it seems like the roadblock, sorry about that, we've got the soldiers, or the Askaris, that have just come past. Sorry, they surprised us there, and it seems that they're going to help clear the road for us. They're not hanging around and waiting for the roadblock to clear. They're forcing their way through. But that means that I can move up a little bit and we can have a closer look at these buffalo. I did want to show you on their hooves. They've got these little false hooves just above their hooves, and we call those the dew claws. You can very often see that when you're looking at their tracks in the soft mud. You can see their normal toes or their normal hooves, and then that of the dew claws. And you can also see the same with warthogs. They also show that, and so quite special with those particular animals. But everybody spending a bit of time ruminating now, and there you can see their hooves, but we can't see the back of them, so you'd have to turn a little bit. There you can see just to the left there, that's his little dew claw, and you'll see that in soft mud. Very easy then to see that it is indeed buffalo. But I'd like Adrian just to have a look over the top of these buffalo in general, because we have quite a number of animals within this herd, and so it's quite impressive. And there's a lot of them watching us, and lots with oxpeckers jumping all over them. And the oxpeckers really do like the buffalo, because they've got lots of hair and normally lots of ticks. Right, folks, so this has been an absolutely wonderful morning sunrise drive. Thank you from my part for joining us. This is going to be my last little segment, and I really hope that you join us this afternoon for the sunset drive. But it's not over just yet. We're going from one animal in the Big Five to another. Let's head you over to Brent.
There we go. Heading off to find some shade as predicted, as the sun gets a bit warmer. And you can see there are a lot of lions in the Angama pride. Lots of hungry mouths to feed. I probably hope to find some swine, some bacon for breakfast. Click Clack would like to know, who likes termite mounds more, lion or leopard? Well, I would say it depends where you are. In the Mara, definitely lions and cheetah. We see them far more often on the termite mounds than a leopard, but a leopard does enjoy a good termite mound. And Djuma, I would say the leopard likes more termite mounds more, and that's probably due to the fact that the termite mounds on Djuma are far thicker, and there's a lot more bush and scrub on it. Now, the lions, we're not the only one watching the lions, apart from all the vehicles you can see. The giraffe are watching the lions quite carefully as they descend down towards the shade next to the lugga in the forest. But as always, it's splendid to have you on the back of our safari vehicle here in the Masai Mara, and it was an absolutely wonderful drive. I know we had a bit of a quiet one to start, but fortunately Djuma was producing lions and leopards, and we got our lions right at the end of the drive. Hopefully they'll still be around this afternoon. I think I might come look for them around the edge of the forest. There's one who got left behind, catching up. And don't you guys get left behind for the sunset safari. We'd love to have you with us again. So from all of us here in the Masai Mara and the Djuma, people who are already scoffing down there, oh, tackle, bacon and eggs, and the cajoling Angama Pride. We can't wait to see you in a few short hours for the sunset safari.